Hi students, this is Mr. Goodwin here, and I'm one half of your science team at Hawaii Technology Academy for the middle school. Okay, the other half of the science department would be Mr. LaChance. He's teaching 6th and 7th grade this year, and then I'm teaching 7th and 8th grade, so we are splitting the grades. What I'd like to talk to you about today is how to take notes in science. Now, we had planned to go through this with you in school on Friday, but it was as a result of a water main break, we did not have class. So just want to go over some different things with you, sort of get you started on this, and then we will next Wednesday in class we'll go over this and try to give you a little bit more help. But these are some of the basics about how to take notes in science. So I just want to say to start off that taking notes has been pretty instrumental in Mr. LaChance and myself getting to where we are. We used to be study partners in college, and I actually dug up a picture of us studying together. As you can see, sometimes I had to explain a lot of things to him in order for him to understand, but I'm a very visual learner, and so you can tell that I like to draw a lot of pictures with my notes. Okay, so that's a picture of the old days. Okay, so some basic questions and answers about taking notes. So one question you might ask is, why do we take notes? And the short answer to that is it's an effective way to learn and remember material. Okay, and you'll be using this skill all the way through college and maybe even later in life as well, depending on what road you take career-wise. Another thing is we're taking written notes this year, not online notes. We're not going to type in a Google Doc for science. And when you take written notes, it brings in another sense because you're writing and you're making drawings. It's just a better way to learn is to take written notes. Okay, question number 2, how often should I take notes in science? Well, that's an easy answer. You should take notes for every lesson. In your typical week, you're looking at probably 4 to 5 lessons in science. Okay, where should I take notes is on the next slide. So you're going to have a science composition book. I'm going to talk to you a little bit of how to set this up today. In Wednesday, next Wednesday, at the Learning Center, we'll go through some more nitty-gritty details. But anyhow, on the cover of your composition book, you want to write your name and your grade with the Sharpie. Okay, and then you can go ahead and flip that open. On Wednesday, we're going to give you a rubric to tape to the inside. So a rubric is basically going to show you how we will grade your science notebooks. So every couple weeks, Mr. LaChance and myself, regardless of your grade level, we will be taking a look through your science notebooks and giving it a grade. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to go ahead and start numbering the pages in your composition book. Your numbers go on the bottom outside corner, so this would be page 1, you flip it, page 2, page 3, and so on. We're actually going to number all the pages in your composition book this year. On page 1, it's the title page. Basically, you're just going to write your name, your grade, and your period number. That helps us to locate you. If this book is left behind, we know exactly where it goes and where you sit for what period of the day you're in science. Okay, when you flip that and get to page 2, we're going to give you a notes template to put in there. We're going to be looking at this notes template in just a second, and it's going to give you the proper format to follow when you're taking your notes. The next 3 pages are going to be your table of contents page. We will label that on Wednesday in class. Okay, so this is important because on Monday you get your first lesson on your calendar for science. And when you start taking your notes, you want to start your notes on page 6 because you want to start it after the table of contents. So this is nice and big in red. On Monday, please start in your composition book on page 6. Okay. So here's the template. This is how we're going to take notes in science. We're going to start off with the title of the lesson. We're going to have the objective or objectives after that. You're also going to have key terms or key words that we'll go ahead and list those up here as well. Then you get to the main body of your notes. So you'll notice these are in 2 columns. So the first column is basically for like a big idea. It's just a couple of words. Maybe it's a vocabulary word. Maybe it's a phrase. Okay, and then what you do on the right-hand side, the larger side, is you're going to write notes about it, definitions. You maybe even want to write draw pictures, charts, different details about these big ideas over here. The last thing you'll do when you finish a lesson is you'll write a brief summary 20 words or less. So if you can summarize the lesson in 20 words or less, it could be one sentence. That will basically finish out your notes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go over a sample. Now, if you're watching this recording, you're probably a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader. So what I needed to do was pick one lesson to go over, and I picked 7th grade. Okay, so basically when you log into Connexus, a good place to click is the calendar. And so your calendar populates sort of on the right-hand side of your screen, and then then things are listed by the date and what you're supposed to do that day. So you 7th graders should see your science lesson on Monday is defining life. Okay, for you other 6th graders and 8th graders, it's going to say something different. Okay, I'm just doing this because it's I had to pick a subject area, and I guess 7th grade won. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to show you how I would take notes on that lesson. Okay, I'm just going to go through a couple of slides. Okay, so here's the lesson. You can see it says defining life up here. Here's the different parts of the lesson. It's going to have an introduction that's just a couple of slides. It's going to have a learn and explore section, which is the main body of the lesson. The last thing it's going to have is a review. Once you have the review, ideally you'll be ready to take the quiz, which counts for a grade. Okay, so let's go ahead and start and see what this looks like. Okay, so I'm still in the introduction part, and it's got 3 slides. So what I would do, because I'm a good student, I would go ahead and read through this first slide of the introduction. Okay, read through the second slide. This is going to kind of get my brain primed up for today's lesson. And then the last slide in the introduction is very important because it has my objective. Okay, and it says, list the characteristics all living things share. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to take this objective here and I want to put that in my notes. And I've already done that. I'm doing this on a Google Doc just to make it easy to show you on this. But basically, there's the title of this lesson. It's called Defining Life. The objective is list characteristics all living things share. Okay, and then it listed some key terms: organism, cell, unicellular, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and list those. That way I don't have to keep referring back to this slide to get my main information. It's written in my notes. Okay, so you see the objectives, the objective, and then you also see the keywords, and I would list them all here. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start the lesson. Okay, I've gotten to the learn and explore. This is the main part of the lesson. It will be your longest part. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start, and you can see down here that it's 15 slides. Okay, so what I would do is I would start reading. So we're talking about the characteristics of living things. If you were asked to name some living things or organisms, you might name yourself, a pet, and maybe some insects or plants. Okay, now there's one of my keywords, organisms. And it just says if you're asked to name some living things or organisms. So in my notes, I'm going to write my first keyword, which is organism. Okay, definition for organism is it's a living thing. Okay, easy enough, right? And I keep reading along, and right on this slide, this first slide, they have a really important sentence here at the end. They even put it in bold. Okay, all living things have a cellular organization, contain similar chemicals, use energy, respond to their surroundings, grow and develop, and reproduce. So because that has directly to do with my objective, this characteristics all living things share, I definitely want to write that important sentence in here. Okay, and I meant to say this earlier, but basically your objective is so important because a lot of times when you're just learning how to take notes, you're not really sure what to write down. So a lot of students either write too much or they write too little. Okay, and what your objective does is it gives you a focus that you want to look at, and when you're trying to decide should I write it down or not as you go through the lesson, keep looking back at your objective or objectives and say, okay, does this have directly to do with that objective? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and write it down. So what we had been reading is that the characteristics of living things are that they have a cellular organization. They contain similar chemicals. Okay, and I would keep listing These use energy, respond to their surroundings. Okay, and you'll notice if I was handwriting these, which you will be, I left a little bit of room next to them so that I can go ahead when the lesson explains these in more detail. I can write some words with it to explain. I can write, draw pictures, etc. You get the idea. So what I would do is I would keep in that manner going through the lesson and taking notes. Okay, so some of the slides have different examples that you can click on. They may have a little video there. So I would go all the way, when I get to that slide number 15, I know I'm done with the main part of the lesson. Okay, and when I'm done with the main part of the lesson, that's a good time to go ahead and write my 20-word or less brief summary. So I've finished my notes. I finished the lesson. I'm ready to write my brief summary. I'm going to try to sum up the lesson in 20 words or less. Okay. And then after that, well, I've got it on this slide here. So basically, when you're finished with the lesson, what do? You write your summary, 20 words or less. Then you're ready to go ahead and review your notes and take the end of lesson assessment if there is one. Okay, so the very last thing is you're going to do the review, then you're going to take your quiz, okay, and this is a score that will be counted for you. Okay, so those are the basics of how to take notes. Like I said, this is very brief. We'll go over it more in class on Wednesday. Please let us know if you have any question. Thanks. Aloha.